Most Maligned Horror Podcast. This is a show offering critical analysis and contextualization of the horror films of the early 2000s. I'm your host, Macaulay Elijah Quinn. I am a filmmaker and film critic, and on today's episode, I'll be discussing with you April 2000's The St. Francisville Experiment, one of the first films I can remember which tries to capitalize on the success of the Blair Witch Project, but which fails to understand what it was that made that film such a success.
Deep in the heart of the South, at the end of a long, dark road, stands a very old house, shrouded in mystery.
I always heard the rumors, but they never really knew if it was true.
Veiled in secrets.
When the door opened, they were immediately sent back. I was done to death, but everyone was alive.
Then spoken of.
Half of his face had been peeled away. He was force-fed so that he stayed alive.
In whispers.
On dark, stormy nights, they could hear a young girl screaming out in the courtyard.
All of her joints were broken when she was forced into the cage. When they took her out, her joints had reset at obscene angles, so she looked more like a crab than a human.
Now, 4 complete strangers
I cannot believe we're doing this.
will spend one night in that very house.
To get proof.
So this is where I admit to you that I am a masochist. I am a glutton for punishment because I love found footage films. I seek out found footage films more than any other genre. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings on the genre. It's the one genre that I feel that I could talk about forever. If you just sat me down and said, let's have a discussion about found footage, I feel like I would be able to do that pretty easily. Those of you who have been following my work for a while now will know that I already have a number of videos discussing various aspects of the genre up on YouTube. So I've got like a video covering the found footage web series Marble Hornets. I have another covering one of my favourite movies, Lake Mungo, an Australian found footage horror film. Like I said, it's a genre that I have a lot of strong thoughts and feelings about, specifically about how the films are constructed and then how they are then received by audiences. And all of this was spurred by the Blair Witch Project. My love of the genre started with the Blair Witch Project, which I watched when I was about 11 years old. It was, a very impressionable age, and it really affected me. It changed my brain chemistry. It made me think about filmmaking and think about art in a way that I just had not done before. I think it's fair to say that the Blair Witch Project is likely the most important film of my life, in that it changed the way that I viewed art and viewed filmmaking and storytelling. I certainly wouldn't be here doing this show the way that I do today if it weren't for that film.
Tell me where you are, John! John!
I don't want to spend too much of this episode talking about the Blair Witch Project because in a few months' time we're going to be covering the Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows, which I think I want to save a lot of discussion about the Blair Witch Project specifically for that episode, but it is important here as a way to sort of contextualize why this film was made, why it exists. So the Blair Witch Project releases in July of 1999, and in its first week it earns $1.5 million. That then grows to $29.2 million in its third week when it gets bumped to numerous other theatres, and then from there it just explodes. And by the end of its theatrical run, The film has a worldwide gross of $248.6 million, which is something like 400 times its original budget. The film is a massive success. It is a sleeper hit. It becomes the 10th highest grossing film of 1999 and is immediately cemented as one of the highest grossing independent films of all time. It was a true global phenomena, and almost immediately there were various parodies and people trying to capitalize on the film's success. My favorite of which is probably in August of 1999, the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF, had a segment called the Blonde Bytch Project.
What are you watching anyway?
Commercial for that scary movie, 3 kids go in the wood, get lost.
Oh, the true story.
That ain't a true story. That ain't even a true legend. But if you want to hear about a true legend, psst, come here.
What?
Have you heard the legend of the Blonde Bytch?
Blonde Bytch?
Rumor has it happened right here in the woods of Ames, Iowa. I say we get our cameras, go out in the woods, and dig up the dirt of this legend.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go. Come on, come on.
Oh, geez, you got me. Oh, my neck.
That particular parody is just, it's ingrained in my memory, and it's so silly and just so utterly tasteless and so weird for a wrestling company to do as well. It really brings me a lot of joy thinking about that segment. The St. Francisville Experiment, though, was one of the first films released that tried to capitalize on the Blair Witch Project's success. And it does so by stealing that film's visual style as well as its marketing tactics. The Blair Witch Project, when it was released, was marketed as though the film were real. This is something that everybody talks about whenever they talk about the Blair Witch Project, is, oh, it was like people thought it was real when it came out. And this film tries to do the same thing to much less success. The St. Francisville Experiment is plot light. There is not a lot going on in the film. It is about a group of university students who are tasked with spending the night in a supposedly haunted house. A haunted house where supposedly sometime in the past this wealthy socialite had lived. She was a slave owner who had a particular... She was particularly cruel to her slaves. This story draws a lot on the historical figure Delphine LaLaurie, who was just this absolutely vicious, vile woman who would beat and abuse her slaves to a degree that was, like, extreme even for the time. Like, the police, when they heard about her treatment of these slaves, when they entered her home, they were shocked by the treatment that these people had been subjected to, and it was just absolutely despicable stuff. Her story is also the basis for the plot of the Lucio Fulci film The Beyond, so as well as stealing from the Blair Witch Project, the St. Francisville Experiment is also stealing from that film in terms of its plot, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Immediately, this film is just so obviously a cash grab. So supposedly, this film began life as a documentary, but the decision was made mid-production to instead shoot a found footage horror film. And I don't think that you need sort of any expertise in filmmaking to recognize why this might be. The Blair Witch Project makes all of this money, and all of a sudden this documentary becomes a found footage horror film. I don't think that we need to really... I don't think that I need to, join those pieces for you. And In interviews that were given following the film's release, the director had stated that he was actually trying to sort of intentionally spoof the Blair Witch Project, but while watching the film, that really wasn't the vibe that I got. Like, there are some overt references to the Blair Witch Project in this film. At one point, a character literally just, like, looks down the barrel of the lens and just says, like, "Did you see the film The Blair Witch?" Or something like that, at least. And it's just, it's absolutely ridiculous. They're so blatant about what it is that they're doing. I've spoken before on this show, in our discussion of Head Cheerleader, Dead Cheerleader, I think it was, I've expressed my distaste for supposed parody films which simply replicate scenes from the film that they are supposedly parodying, and this film is just doing that. Like, in every way, stylistically, in the editing, in the ways that the filmmakers set up the plot, this is an attempt to cash in on the Blair Witch Project. Down to, like, even I think, like, the font and stuff like that. Like, this film opens with white text on a black background, same way that the Blair Witch Project does. And I'm pretty sure that it is, like, the exact same font or, like, a lookalike of the font that was used in the opening to the Blair Witch. It's so, again, the word that I keep coming back to is blatant. This film is just so creatively bankrupt. There's so little going on that it's a little hard to talk about, because it's not bad in an exciting or interesting way. It's bad in the way that, like, a headache is bad, where it's just this dull ache, and you're just sitting there and you're watching the film and you're so bored the entire time, and it's a hard watch. This one really was quite difficult to get through and to sort of stay invested in. Found footage is truly the most maligned of the horror subgenres. It gets so little respect from audiences and critics and filmmakers as well. It's a cheap genre. It's one of the easiest genres of film to produce, in that financially there's very little barrier to entry. Consumer grade cameras can be used, janky special effects can be used, the visuals can be, like, muddy and out of focus, and all of that can be argued to be a stylistic choice. So you don't have to have a lot of experience. You don't have to have a lot of financial backing or pre-production time to make a found footage film. And so because of this, there are a lot of found footage films that are produced, and the majority of them have very little creative oversight. So you can, like, see this on like YouTube, for instance. There's this abundance of found footage web series on YouTube. For a long time, they were impossible to avoid. There were shows like Marble Hornets and Everyman Hybrid and Local 58. And while I absolutely adore those series, for every one of those, there was something like Just Acquaintances, which was significantly weaker in terms of, like, its respect for the found footage form.
Nick, do you know what this is? I don't know, some kind of religious text or something? This is satanic.
As well, there are films like The Outwaters from last year. There's Horror in the High Desert. There's Mr. Creep. And, like, ironically, the overabundance of found footage media means that there is a higher barrier of entry for audiences, because it's so hard to find good found footage media, because it's so hard to find Lake Mungos or Savage Lands or Nories or occults. because it's so hard to find those films, because you have to wade through so much muck, the genre itself just becomes really unappealing to general audiences. This is what I mean when I say that I am a masochist for liking this genre, because I am one of those people who is willing to suffer through, 10, 20 terrible found footage films just to find the one really great one. But general audiences, that's just not their jam. That's not what they're here to do. We're actually going to see this happening in real time later in this series. In 2007, Paranormal Activity releases, and that film's success sparks another one of these found footage booms. There's suddenly production companies are just pumping out found footage films, and so we can see in real time, we're going to be able to follow as audiences start to reject the genre and start to reject even the Paranormal Activity franchises. As more sequels come out, audiences are just going to really just start revolting. I said at the beginning that I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings about found footage, and I'm really excited to talk more about this in the future. But unfortunately, the San Francisville Experiment, this just isn't the place to talk about it, because this is just such a weak example. There's so little meat on these bones that I kind of I think that it's best that we just move on, that we just recognize that this was a creatively bankrupt project, it was a cheap cash grab, and we'll just leave it at that. We'll just move on, and the next time that a found footage film rolls around, maybe we can have that discussion then. There's another couple that are on the docket for this year, and I'm quite excited to talk about both of those. The Hip Hop Witch is coming up, starring Eminem and a number of other rappers, and I'm curious to watch that. I've never actually seen it. I've heard that it's quite bad, but I think that it's going to be bad in at least a more interesting way than this film was. And as well, Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows is coming up, or rather Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, sorry. That film's coming up, and while it's not strictly a found footage film, there are elements of found footage in there which I'm curious to sort of unpack. So there's a lot more to come, and so I say look forward to that. Avoid this film at all costs. I'd like to thank Janka Glonis for the use of her track Slime Dripping Down the Walls off of the album Fun Time Party Gal. A link to that album and to their Bandcamp can be found in the episode description. If you have any comments or queries regarding the show and you want to get in touch, you can do that on Twitter at Most Maligned or via email mostmaligned@gmail.com. If you could please take a moment to leave a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, I would really appreciate that. Next week on the show, we'll be discussing August 2000's Hollow Man. That's going to be a fun film to unpack. I have not watched that film since I was a kid, but I remember it being really good, really interesting, so looking forward to that one. But until then, this has been the Most Maligned Horror Podcast.